Senators will be in their seats, and the clerk will call the roll.
Alley. Baumgartner. Billinger. Blasey. Bowers. Clays. Corson. Dietrich. Dahl. Erickson. Fagg. Fauscudo. Francisco. Gossage. Haley. Holland. Hulsher. Kirshen. Cluse. Longbine. Masterson. McGinn. Olson. O'Shea. Peck. Peterson. Petty. Pittman. Pyle. Reddy. Reichman. Schallenberger. Steffen. Straub. Sykes. Thompson. Tyson. Ware. Warren. Wilborn.
Senators and the guests, please rise and give prayerful attention to the chaplain.
Would you please join me in prayer? Lord, in humble appreciation, you are the author of life. And your word in Job 14, verse 5 reveals that the days of our lives are numbered. You have placed limits on the time we will spend here. The days you're giving us to serve will one day be cut off. But like leap year adds another day to the calendar in Proverbs 9, verse 11, you tell us that wisdom will add days and even add years to our calendars. So, Lord, our request today is for wisdom, for the ability to look at life and all of life's concerns through your eyes, to see things from your perspective as we handle our assignments. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 14 through 30, Jesus tells the illuminating story of three servants. One lacked godly wisdom and was unprofitable in handling his responsibility. But two of them faithfully and wisely handled theirs. They heard your words of affirmation, "Well done," and received great reward. Lord, we'd like one day to hear you tell us, "Well done." For if we wisely tackle the responsibilities we have here, using the abilities you've given us, you proclaim that we'll be rewarded even more greatly, exponentially in eternity. I thank you for the opportunity and privilege to be of service. In Jesus' name, amen.
Continue standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On a point of personal privilege, the chair recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today, fellow senators, we have the opportunity to honor an Eagle Scout from DeSoto. Alexei Gemsky is the youngest of 6 children, and he's a senator, as I said, at DeSoto High. He joined the Scouts in 2012. He plans on attending the Johnson County Community College and the University of Wyoming, majoring in history and completing his Air Force ROTC to receive his commission. I would like to read this to Alexei. In recognition of achieving the rank of Eagle Scout, congratulations on achieving this rank. Most worthwhile goals in life require hard work and dedication. Your many years of scouting and volunteering in our state, along with your hard work and dedication, are recognized this day and will serve you well in your future. Your troop, community, and the state of Kansas are extremely proud of this accomplishment. Well done. Please join me in honoring him with applause. Alexei, if you'll remain standing, I would also ask that your parents stand, Chrissy and Gavin Gemsky, and your Scoutmaster Jason Powers and his wife Lori. Thank you for being with us.
Welcome to the Senate and job well done. Thank you. Messages from the House, the clerk will read.
Announcing passage of House Bill 2358, House Bill 2543, 2608, and 2790. HB 2358, an act concerning public health. 2790, an act concerning labor and employment. 2543, an act concerning agriculture. And 2608, an act concerning agriculture.
Please see the March 4th Journal for report from the Kansas Fights Addiction Board. Before recessing, are there announcements? Chair recognizes Senator from Johnson, Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Just want to recognize my page today, Judah Allen, right up here. Give him a big Senate welcome. Thank you very much. I was a Senate page in the 8th grade, so this is a cautionary tale for him of what could happen to you if you hang around here too long. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
The chair recognizes the Senator from Johnson, Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I just want to acknowledge our colleague coming from the Independent Party back to the Republican Party from Brown. So thank you.
Congratulations. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Republicans will caucus in room 548 upon recess. And I yield to the Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The Democrats will caucus in room 287 North upon adjournment. I yield back to the Senator from Cali.
Senator from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move the Senate recess to the sound of the gavel.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The Senate is recessed. The Senate will come to order. The chair recognizes the Majority Leader from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move the Senate resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of bills on the calendar under the heading of General Orders.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries. The chair appoints the senator from Sedgwick, Senator McGinn, to preside over the Committee of the Whole.
The Senate, having resolved itself in the Committee of the Whole, will now consider those items listed on the calendar under the heading of General Orders. We'll now turn our attention to SB 365. The chair recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Thompson, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Senate Bill 365 basically returns law to what it was prior to 2017 when the 3-day grace period for elections was passed. Basically what this does is allow that all advance voting ballots are received in the office of the county election officer, any satellite election office, any polling place, or a county-maintained election drop box within the county not later than the hour of closing the polls on the date of any election, and shall be delivered by the county election office to the appropriate special election board provided for in KSA 25-1133. And of course, this is a bill that was passed out of the House and passed in 2017. At the time, the concern was that the military did not have time to get their ballots back, and that was really the primary impetus for this bill in the first place, as was testified by the House Elections Chair, Keith Esau, who helped to get this passed. And he even testified in committee and also during the interim committee this past year prior to session that this was a mistake. They now recognize that it creates all sorts of problems, that a lot of times the postage is not postmarked, and there's barcodes that are undecipherable to an election official to tell whether or not it was received on time in the first place. In addition, we've got more and more issues with the post office. In fact, Senator Marshall and Representative LaTurner has sent a letter to the Postmaster General of the United States concerned about the number of post offices closing in the state of Kansas. And so it looks more and more like the mail-in voting is an issue, and that anyone who's concerned about making sure that their vote is counted may want to consider alternative methods, and there are plenty of ways to get your vote in. There's the advanced voting rolls, the permanent advanced voting rolls that people can sign up for. So basically, the bottom line is this requires that all those ballots that come in from the mail are received by or before 7 p.m. at the close of Election Day, so that they are subject to the same rules as everyone else who votes in person and is in line at 7 p.m. and the polls close, and that's it. So it just requires a uniform end time through the election, and also restores confidence that during that 3-day grace period, people might see changes in the races that undermines the confidence in the election process unnecessarily. So that's a very simple bill, and I will stand for questions.
Are there questions for the senator from Johnson? Chair recognizes Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't have a question. I have an amendment.
Have you turned it in?
Yes, I have. It's 3387.
Give everybody a chance to get it. Would you like to explain your amendment or have it read?
If at once you don't succeed, try again. No, this is an amendment that this body saw last year and passed. It would ban remote drop boxes, only remote drop boxes. With that, I'd stand for question.
Are there questions for the senator from Lynn? I'll recognize you when you're at your desk. Chair recognizes the senator from Sedgwick, Senator Falscado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If the gentlelady would respond to, from Lynn, would respond to a question.
She will.
Thank you. I'm sorry, if you could restate your explanation of your amendment, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The explanation of the amendment is that it would not allow remote drop boxes. Currently, boxes that are not manned or monitored are allowed, and we have statute that does not allow ballot harvesting, so there's no way to enforce that statute as long as we allow these remote boxes. So that's all it would do, is not allow remote boxes, drop boxes.
Senator from Sedgwick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this similar to the legislation? I know Senator Hildebrand referenced legislation similar, and does this mean throughout the state or just in certain areas? Yes, Madam Chair.
Senator from Lynn, would you like to address what Senator Hildebrand may have done?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It was not Senator Hildebrand. Actually, I ran this amendment last year. The Senate passed it. Overwhelmingly, we passed it. It goes to conference committee, and the chairman pulls it out in the House. So disappointing we lost the Senate position. We're going to try again.
Senator from Sedgwick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions for the senator from Lynn? Chair recognizes the senator from Douglas, San Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, especially since the good senator from Lynn has thought about this before. Does she have any information for us about which counties have election offices located central to that county, or what counties might have election offices that are closer to one of their county borders?
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There are different counties that run their offices differently. All this does, it says if you have a remote box, it would not be allowed. You can have it at a location, wherever your office is, you can have a location, but not remote drop boxes that are unmanned.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Especially when we're also considering a bill that might make it more difficult for mailed ballots to be counted. I think we should be encouraging the use of ballot boxes, and my concern would be how much distance would some county residents have to travel to be able to make use of those ballot boxes? Again, if we had every election office in the center of the county, that might be easier, but that is not the case. And I think this would not give a county election officer the ability to make sure those ballot boxes were located in appropriate places. There's also going to be some counties that have more than one municipality with a significant number of voters. And again, this could make one of those municipalities, make it easier to vote for people living in the city with a ballot box than those who live in a perhaps equally large city or larger city without. Thank you.
I recognize the senator from Wyandotte, Senator Haley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not on Fed and State, didn't hear the underlying bill, but I sit on your committee, Madam Chair, with Ethics and Elections, and I'm wondering if the senator from Lynn, who's bringing this, would help us to better understand some of the discussions about these drop boxes, as they've been called. Because my recollection, Madam Chair, in the committee, we heard from the Secretary of State, Secretary Schwab. I'm not speaking for him, but I believe that he was concerned about not having ballot boxes available. If I remember correctly, Madam Chair, and the senator from Lynn can help me to perhaps know if she's conferred with the Secretary of State, Schwab, who was concerned who suggested, again, not speaking for him, but paraphrasing if I heard in our committee, Ethics and Elections, that they're more secure than even a mailed ballot. That the analogy that he gave is that you put a stamp on in returning your ballot, but sometimes it goes out of state. That ballot will, before it gets to the clerk or to the election commission, that it's more secure, it's safe, and it's more accessible, and it's better to have these boxes that this amendment wants to take out for many of our constituencies. So I guess my question is, if the senator from Lynn bringing this has conferred with those who actually implement how the election process goes, and if she has gotten any information as to whether they might be supportive of not of the removal of ballot boxes, Madam Chair.
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have conferred with election clerks and other individuals. I have quite a few constituents that are concerned over the issue of remote drop boxes. It just makes sense to be able to enforce our other election laws by not allowing something that completely contradicts current law.
Senator from Wyandotte, you wish to respond?
I don't think it contradicts, Madam Chair, current law. Current law certainly has and has implemented with great success to try and get higher turnout, which is certainly a goal I hope we would all share, to get a larger count or a bigger turnout of all of our constituencies to participate and to have an ability to safely have their vote counted and brought in. If the senator from Lynn could share, is there any anomaly that it would be, but any stories she might know of or concern that's been expressed as to why we're doing away with a very effective and legal means, that is the drop boxes? I don't know, I haven't heard of any. Maybe she has, Madam Chair.
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So it's interesting, these remote boxes that are not monitored can be tampered with. They could pour liquids in and destroy the ballots. They can, we can have ballot harvesting, where you can put hundreds of ballots in, which is against the law for one person to put over 10 ballots in. This body deliberated on that and landed on the number 10. So this would just help us enforce the current laws and protect the integrity of the ballot. We need to make sure that those ballots are counted and accurate. So why wouldn't you want to make sure that it gets to the polling place, or take it to the county courthouse, or have a good friend or family member drop it there? It's just saying no remote drop boxes.
Senator from Wyandotte.
Well, I haven't heard of any tampering or haven't heard of any stories. Again, I'm not saying I'm well versed on every horror story of ballot collection that's available, but I just haven't heard. I try to stay well informed and read the news. I think the concerns that the senator from Lynn is expressing that would do away with an effective system that's, again, helping people to cast their ballot, which is, I hope, all of our goal. As though that's why we're here, is We're all here because people are able to vote and access the polls or the ballot. That's how we got here, Madam Chair. So the system is working very well, and doing away with the access is something I just want each of us to ask why we really want to do away with something that's effective, that's safe, and that has had no ill effect, and that our chief Secretary of State, our chief election officer, thinks is an effective system. Again, not speaking for him, but having heard him share this before, he would want, I believe, if he were here, to maintain the system as it is, and would not support this amendment, as I hope we won't either. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair recognizes, would you like to respond? Okay. Chair recognizes Senator from Johnson, Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question, if I may.
You may.
Just for clarification purposes, would this apply to boxes that have cameras for security and procedures in place to ensure that security is adhered to?
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This does not allow any remote ballot boxes. And I would remind the body that when you drop your ballot in a mailbox, there's federal law and regulations with tampering with that. There's nothing to protect those ballot boxes. They can be damaged, they can be destroyed. There's no law, no statute that protects those ballot boxes that I'm aware of. So I'm trying to protect the integrity of the ballots. I would yield to the good senator from Johnson.
Senator from Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There have been incidents of problems in some of these remote drop boxes. In November 2023, it was reported that 5 states, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, California, and Georgia, had fentanyl-laced ballots placed in those remote drop boxes, and it caused a safety concern for the election officials and the election workers. So to think that there cannot be any kind of tampering with these remote drop boxes, they are unmanned, unmonitored. There could be definitely a safety issue. It could spoil the ballots. And of course, the chain of custody issue is also a concern. So again, it's something for the sake of convenience, but it undermines the safety and the chain of custody. I would contend that that's a problem, and I'll yield back to the senator from Lynn.
Senator from Lynn. Okay. Senator from Johnson.
So we have 5 states where there has been an issue, not Kansas, and we do have provisions in place for security of our boxes with monitoring and cameras in place. I do want to address a question that was brought up by the senator from Wyandotte County. He is correct, and in committee it was shared with us by the Secretary of State's office, and this is important for the body to consider on this amendment. The Secretary of State office has asked that drop boxes remain if the 3-day grace period is eliminated. So this amendment that is being brought forward is actually in direct opposition to what the Secretary of State office has asked be allowed if this bill were to be moved forward. So I do think that is something that needs to be considered based upon testimony that they shared with us. Thank you.
Senator, do you wish to respond? Okay. Chair recognizes, I believe, the senator from Meade, Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My part of the state, a lot of the post office goes on to Texas, and sometimes it takes as long as a week. Come on back, and on this particular bill to change it for 3 days, it says, okay, I'll change back as long as we have they can still drop off in front of the office. They have a drop box right in front there. So I think this amendment will hurt the underlying bill. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will respond to that because they still can put it in the mail. They can have a friend take it or a family member take it to the courthouse and drop it off. They can drop it off at the polling place on Election Day. They can protect that ballot even more than putting it in a box that we heard in some states have fentanyl. laced with drugs. I mean, how horrible is that for them to have to even think about that and worry about it? Also, gasoline. We've seen boxes where gasoline was thrown on it and it was ignited. The ballots were all burned. You have no idea whose ballots were in that box or not. That is not protecting the integrity of the election and the ballot box. So I stand strongly that we remove remote ballot boxes.
Are there other questions for the senator from Lynn on the amendment? Seeing none, Senator, you may make your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I hope that you will stand in support of this amendment. I move my amendment.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. What? I have a roll call. 5 hands are in order for a roll call.
Alley. Baumgardner. Billinger. Lazy. Bowers. Clays. Corson. Dietrich. Dahl. Erickson. Fag. Faust-Goudot. Francisco. Gossage. Haley. Holland. Holscher. Kirshen. Cluse. Longbine. Masterson. McGinn. Olson. O'Shea. Peck. Peterson. Petty. Pittman. Pyle. Reddy. Reichman. Schallenberger. Steffen. Straub. Sykes. Thompson. Tyson. Ware. Warren. Wilborn.
Has every senator had the opportunity to vote? Does any senator wish to explain their vote? Does the clerk will close the roll and tally the vote? (22) voting in favor, 16 against. The motion carries, and we're back on the bill. Chair recognizes the senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that I was in the Ethics Committee that the Secretary of State came and spoke to us about the election. And I have a few questions for the carrier. First question would be, was the question asked in that committee by the carrier of the bill whether he had constituents concerned about how slow the mail is to get to them.
Senator from Johnson.
Well, we had testimony from the previous election chair from the House, and that was in his testimony, talking about the issues with the mail. And the other thing that I had mentioned was a letter that was just recently sent by Senator Marshall and Representative Letourneau about the closure of post offices in Kansas and trying to determine what their future might be.
Senator from Finney.
Did the carrier of the bill ask the Secretary of State about the unreliability of the post office?
Senator from Johnson.
Well, we asked a lot of questions when we talked to the Secretary of State about this, and you know, some of it's on the record, some of it's off the record. But you know, typically when it comes to policy decisions like this, they don't weigh in. They just tell us about where they stand on the bill, and with this, they're pretty much agnostic.
Senator from Finney.
I think when you speak in a committee, everything's on the record. Didn't he state that we have been having voting by mail since the Civil War?
Senator from Johnson.
No, no, we didn't talk about that.
Senator from Finney.
You know, my memory's not the best, so that's why I went and rewatched the whole thing this morning twice. And I believe it was stated that we have not, that mail-in ballots have been there since the Civil War. So I see on the deals that where it tells us where our birthdays are. So the senator from Johnson and mine are about the same time, so I understand the slip of mind every once in a while. That happens, I guess. Did the Secretary of State talk about this, how safe our elections have been in this since he's been Secretary of State?
Senator from Johnson.
They did. They testified about various aspects of the election policy, and that is their contention.
Senator from Finney.
Did he state at any time that he thought there was any fraudulent votes in this last election?
Senator from Johnson.
Kansas.
I don't believe that they said without reservations there was none.
Senator from Finney.
I believe we'd need to go back and watch that film again. Did you, by just talking, did Secretary of State said that he would encourage or discourage this legislation?
Senator from Johnson.
All that Secretary of State encouraged was that we not make major changes to the election law this year. However, once again, the legislature has plenary power over elections, and that is a policy decision that the Secretary of State must follow. So anything the Secretary of State or his staff comes to testify on is simply giving us guidance, but it doesn't mean that that is law. We make the law here in the legislature.
Senator from Finney.
So we want to big boy the Secretary of State, although he thinks that the elections have been running. So, you know, I don't see why we kept passing laws and more laws and more laws, chasing problems that we don't have. Election fraud in Kansas has never been an issue since I can remember, and I've been voting for about as long as you have, I guess, if you voted every time. Thank you.
Senator from Johnson, do you wish to respond?
All I will say is that this base bill is just removing a 3-day grace period, and that would put us in line with 32 other states. So this is not an inordinate type of an ask. All it does is just give us a uniform baseline for a finish line for all voters, including those who vote in person, those who vote by mail, those who vote in advance in person. It just sets a single finish line, which makes complete sense. That way on election night, the vote counts can begin, and it doesn't affect the adjudication of votes, provisional ballots, or anything else. It's a very simple bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair recognizes the senator from Reno, Senator Stephan.
Thank you. I would like to thank the good senator from Johnson County for bringing this bill. And with that, I'd like to bring an amendment to it.
Okay. Have you turned the amendment in?
I have, and its number is 3385.
All right, let us distribute it.
Senator Stephan, would you like me to get one for you? Mark, you want me to get one for you? You don't want anybody to read it.
Senator, we hope that you would like to explain it. Otherwise, we'll be here an extra hour reading it, so.
Well, I am happy to explain it,
Thank
and
you.
it may take a little while because I don't want there to be any confusion. It really is fairly simple. There's a lot of redundant statements in those 20 pages, but this started back in the summer of 2022 when myself, the good senator from Johnson County, and Thad Snyder, who I consider to be our foremost expert in the state on elections, he drew from many of his national resources, and we put Senate Bill 262 together. And I've taken the very best parts of that and turned it into this amendment. And you can look at the fiscal note associated with 262, and it very nicely outlines what this bill does. It sets forth requirements for the use of paper ballots, including requiring all paper ballots to have a serial number. And that's a new aspect of this, is for the ballots to have a serial number. On or after January 1st, 2025, voter ballots would be required to be marked by hand, and only manual counting would be permitted for counting of votes. This amendment would also prohibit the purchase, lease, rent, or use of electronic poll books and mechanical vote tabulating equipment, including optical scanning equipment, again, on or after January the 1st of 2025. It would also amend how votes cast are reported to the Secretary of State and how the agency would report unofficial results to the public. With that, let's look at the amendment. I'm on page 1. This amendment starts when 365 ends. So it's not tucked in, it's not a bit here, a bit there. It just flows from the end of 365. And again, the important parts, which invariably include underlining of section 2, is a serial number established by the Secretary of State to be on each ballot. On and after January 1st, 2025, ballots shall only be marked by hand. On and after January 1st, 2025, ballots shall only be canvassed by hand. Moving to the second page, the paper ballot shall constitute the official ballot and shall be preserved and used as the official ballot, suitable for the purpose of the tabulation of votes and any audit or recount conducted. On and after January 1st, 2025, each paper ballot shall be counted by hand in any recount conducted with respect to any election. In the event of any inconsistencies or irregularities between any electronic vote tallies between now and January 1 of 2025, the vote tallies determined by counting by hand, the paper ballots cast, the paper ballots as counted by hand shall be the true and correct record of the votes cast. And again, the use of electronic or electromechanical voting or tabulation systems and electronic poll books, or poll books not requiring a handwritten signature, will be prohibited after January 1 of 2025. Moving to the end of section 3, which gets you into the bottom part of page 3, talks about when this is how the handling of these initial votes. When the canvass is completed on the night of the election, or if the canvass is continued from day to day at the completion of canvassing on each day, the supervising judge shall promptly transmit the number of votes received by each candidate or the number of votes received for and against a question submitted to the voters to the Secretary of State or the Secretary's designee. And again, now moving into section 4, it just reiterates only manual hand counting. In the second half of page 4, again, it gets into how they handle the counting. And this is all about transparency and where the public can know what's going on. It says the election board completes its canvass on the night of the election, has made the abstracts as provided by subsections A and B. The supervising judge shall promptly report the votes cast for all candidates whose names are printed on the ballots. If the canvass isn't completed the night of the election, the supervising judge shall promptly report the votes counted, indicated by the tally sheets at the end of canvassing each day that the canvass continues until the canvass is completed. All vote counts or results reported to the Secretary of State or Secretary's designee shall be as agreed by the supervising judge and all judges and clerks at the voting place. Such reports shall not be considered in determining the official abstract or be considered as evidence in any proceeding challenging the results of any election, but shall be utilized solely for the purpose of providing current election vote count information. We can move right through page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. At the bottom 9, we get into a special election board conducting a recount as provided by this section shall report the results of the count promptly. Again, it's the same language of how they report the vote to the Secretary of State. Then it gets into no board or county commissioners or the county election officer of any county shall purchase, lease, rent, or use an electronic poll book after January 1. And it says same thing about electromechanical vote tabulating equipment just after that. And this keeps popping up as we have statute after statute after statute that has minor variation that you basically just have to repeat that we're not using this electromechanical equipment anymore. You get into page 11 and it talks about bonds. It says bonds shall not be used after effective date of this act to buy electronic voting equipment. Except that electronic poll books and electronic or electromechanical voting systems or tabulating equipment, including optical scanning equipment, shall not be used after January 1st, 2025. Again, it's redundancy, just kind of goes on and on through pages 12 and 13. Interestingly, in the middle of page 13, paragraph B, I think that should be noted, and that it toughens existing requirements in regards to these electromechanical machines, and it defines exactly how they are to be evaluated. And ultimately, that's through an independent person. It spells out that if a company's not willing to submit their equipment to an inspection, then it can't be purchased, can't be used at any point between now and 2025. From there, into page 15, and we delete the Help America Vote Act of 2002, which really brings nothing to the table. It's It's just federal involvement in our state elections that doesn't change a thing, and so that was deleted. And really, with further ado, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for the senator from Reno? Senator from Finney, would you wish to be recognized, or are you?
Oh, yeah.
You got your mic. I couldn't see it.
Standing
All
here.
right.
Wait,
Senator from
this
Finney.
20-minute explanation, I kind of got lost in the middle of it. So you're going to assign a serial number to each ballot. Is that correct? I'm just trying to break this down to.
Senator from Reno.
Yes.
No. Just a second. Senator Finney.
So when we do these hand counts, we're going to have a serial number matched up with a person looking at a ballot. Is that correct?
Senator from Reno.
There will be a person counting the ballot, yes. If he's referring to the person who cast the ballot, that would be no. The serial number serves to create a means by which, if duplicate votes are snuck in and you're scanning through these numbers or reading through these serial numbers and you have two of the same, you know you got a problem going on. It's a check and balance system.
Senator from Finney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We, you know, in smaller communities and such, you wouldn't understand this in Hutchinson being a metropolitan area. Well, a lot of our counters know our people that are making these counts. And so they're going to look at this serial number, what they're doing this paper ballot, and they're going to match it up, and they're going to go, hey, you know who he voted for? You don't see that being a problem.
Senator
from
Reno.
My apologies.
Senator from Reno.
I do not. There's multiple avenues by which this serial number can be done. It can be covered with a sticker. It can be very, very small. It can be done in a multitude of ways, because that has been brought up and that's been troubleshot, and that would be left up to the Secretary of State to solve that problem, but it's certainly an easily solvable problem.
Senator from Finney.
So we're worried about maybe putting gasoline in a ballot box and all these other different things, and we're not concerned about somebody that can look at a ballot with a serial number that they can attach to a name. I find this amendment hard to support.
Senator from Reno, do you wish to respond?
I do. I'm a little bit confused as to how a serial number is a problem. Like I articulated, it can be done in a manner to keep it covered until the voter votes. It's done as a means by which to validate the paper ballot, and that's what this is about today. This is about election integrity. It's about security. So yeah, no, I think a serial number makes all the sense in the world, and the cost to it is basically nothing. And one can look at it in the fiscal note. From the Secretary of State's standpoint, this amendment has no effect on expenditures.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Faustido.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If the senator from Reno would stand for question.
Yes, he will.
Yes, just for clarification on, I guess the bottom of 3 or the bottom of 2, but my question is the hand counting, is that for all votes cast? So for those that walk in to a voting location, the mailing of advance ballots for both our family in the military and those with disabilities. Are you talking about any vote or just the advance ballot?
Senator from Reno.
All votes will be hand counted.
Senator from Sedgwick.
Madam Chair, very interesting. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Johnson, Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. If you'll stand.
Please.
So do you have, I mean, the underlying bill that we were looking with, I've heard people say we want to make sure Election Day is Election Day. And then with this amendment, how long do you expect it to take to count all of these ballots by hand?
Senator from Reno.
I expect the voting to be done that night. That's been replicated in other states, other counties. It's doable. You got to travel back in time a little bit and relearn how they did it historically, but particularly in a state with stagnant population growth, if it could be done before, it can clearly and easily be done again. So I 100% anticipate the votes being counted as soon as possible, preferably, like I say, then I would expect it to be the night of.
Senator from Johnson.
Well, I think that's a very optimistic interpretation. I look back to my first election in 2016, and at the time, our Secretary of the State at the time made sure all advance ballots were counted again on that night. And they ran those through scanners, and we still did not have the election night results until well into the next day. And so I think this is going to actually cause more concerns. This may work in Hutch, but this would not work in Johnson County. And I think we're going to add probably 4 weeks in Johnson County to figure out what those preliminary numbers are. And then if you have to do that again for the canvass. So I'm going to stand in opposition to this. And yeah, this is a solution in search for a problem that we don't have.
Well, I'd certainly respond to that.
You may.
Thank you. The pursuit of election integrity is never ending because historically we've had cheating in our elections since the elections began. So the concept of not always being out in front of the curve is very foreign to me. You know, voting precincts can be managed or managed a lot like Senate seats. It's a certain population area. You bring your manpower together, you organize ahead of time, and you get these ballots counted. It's not difficult. And it's certainly a lot cheaper than spending millions on machines that are open to hacking and being problematic. You know, I'd much rather tar and feather and run a guy out of town on a rail, a local guy, than throw my hands up and say, man, that Chinese Communist Party, or darn those Russian hackers. This brings it back to the people of the state of Kansas.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Meade, Senator Reckman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When we're on the floor, we do have a lot of different amendments. When you have a 20-page amendment, it shows me a lot of concern. One of the, being a former government teacher, and I love the process with the idea where you get to hear back and forth each particular issue. This particular amendment, there's many, many issues in there. I think we need to hear from other sides. And it really gives me some pause. The other part is I really question the germaneness of this amendment, and I'll ask to have them this check for germaneness. Thank you.
Okay. Senator from Reno, would you like to respond?
Sure. You know, we can certainly address the germaneness. This bill 365 is about handling of votes.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I think the germaneness is a challenge that's not a respondable kind of challenge.
Okay. All right. Just convene this. Okay. I apologize to the Senator from Meade. Did not hear your germaneness. So germaneness has been called, and so we will have the Rules Committee please convene.
I'd be more than happy to proceed with my discussion.
Want to make sure that the Rules Committee can hear each other. Vice President Wilborn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After careful review, the Rules Committee rules the amendment germane.
Okay. Germaneness is in order, and we're back on the bill. And now on the amendment, and at this time, I recognize the senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I'm going to convince you as to why you actually want this amendment and need this amendment. And I'll start with an article in the New Yorker. The New Yorker. When response begins circulating last week that voting machines in Texas were flipping ballots cast for Beto O'Rourke over to Ted Cruz. And machines in Georgia were changing votes from Democrat gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams to those of her Republican opponent, Brian Kemp. It would not have been unreasonable to suppose that those machines had been hacked. After all, their vulnerabilities have been known for nearly 2 decades. I can go on. You can look the article up. It was December 31st in 2018. There is a problem with electronic machines. I wrote a research paper in 2006 on this. And Clay County, Kansas, in 2004, had inverted the election results. Thankfully, they had paper backups so they could actually count and call the election as intended. You think, oh, that's 2004. That's years ago. Well, guess what? In 2020, Cherokee County, Kansas, inverted the election results for a county commission race. It would not have been caught if it wasn't such an egregious number and one of the candidates didn't even live in the state. I talked to the county clerk. She was excellent. She went over and above without being asked and hand counted all of the ballots to ensure the elections in her county. She asked me how that could happen because they test the machines. We walked through the testing process, and it was quite obvious how that could happen. We don't know the testing procedures for each county. Each county has their own. You think, oh, that's an isolated incident in Kansas in 2020. Nope. Advance ballots in Reno County were also miscalibrated and miscounted and inverted. So this does go on. This does happen with Republican and Democrats. We all want accuracy. And that's what this amendment is about, accuracy for our elections. I stand in strong support of this amendment, and I hope you will too.
Senator from Reno, do you wish to respond? You have other questions?
I agree completely. She's spot on.
Chair recognizes Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree that we should be using paper ballots, but this amendment goes far beyond that. With that, I do have some questions for the senator from Reno. Senator from Reno stated that the Secretary of State had said that this will have no fiscal impact. Is that no fiscal impact on the Secretary of State's office, or no fiscal impact on the Secretary of State's office and every one of our counties?
Senator from Reno.
Thank you for that question. The Secretary of State indicates it would use existing resources to provide training and update manuals, et cetera, and that the agency also estimates the bill could affect county election expenditures if the counties realize savings by not using voting equipment versus hiring significantly more temporary election employees to count every ballot by hand in every election. It basically says the agency does not have sufficient data to calculate the fiscal effect on the counties. But when you look at these counties spending millions of dollars on these electrical devices, that's pretty straightforward savings. And I don't see how they're going to spend that kind of money on help counting. So, yeah, the Secretary of State felt like it wasn't going to have an effect on their department. It was a little unequivocal on the counties, but I think common sense tells you where that's going to end up. It's not going to cost the counties anything if they manage it correctly. You do have to have business acumen when you make these decisions and these changes, but with good business acumen, I'm very confident the counties will save money.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the reference would be to stranded costs. Much of the counties have already paid, who use electronic voting machines, already have paid for those voting machines. I'm not sure that they will be able to sell them. And we will add a number of costs for each county. I did serve on our election boards in Douglas County when the election board counted the ballots by hand. At that point, we had both a counting board and a polling board. So the counting board came in at 4 in the afternoon to start work on counting ballots. It could not have happened if it were the same people, and it certainly may not happen that same night. So one thing that we have to remember that electronic tallying will do is give a receipt for each of the races in a particular election. It would take a lot to go through if you have 12 different races to go through and make sure that you're counting those and getting those all correctly entered. I'll also say that when we did our redistricting, we created some problems, especially in Douglas County, crossing over lines. In an election, we had, in one precinct, we had 32 different ballot styles. That board was not able to get their counting done and went back with their ballots to the election clerk's office. If that happens again, there is no way that the same group that's running the election is going to be able to tally the results from 32 different ballot styles. So I'm a little confused because it talks about when the canvass is completed, the supervising judge shall promptly transmit the number of votes received to the Secretary of State or the Secretary's designee. Is that designee the county election officer?
Senator from Reno. You had a question.
I'm sorry, I missed the question part.
Please repeat the question, Senator from Douglas.
Certainly. On page 3 of the amendment, it talks about when the canvass is completed, and I'm assuming this is the canvass of the individual polling place, that the supervising judge shall promptly transmit the number of votes to the Secretary of State or the Secretary's designee. Is the Secretary's designee the county election officer?
Senator from Reno.
I'm afraid I'm struggling to hear her clearly, and for that I apologize. But yeah, you know, the canvas, it's going to be canvassed, it's going to be relayed to the Secretary of State or their designee. The Secretary of State can make rules and regulations on the minutia of such, but we're just not using mechanical or electrical devices in this process.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, because the polling board would likely report to their county election officer, and then the votes would be confirmed and sent on. But that would be some good understanding to have from the Secretary of State's office. Has the senator from Reno had any experience with electronic poll books?
Senator from Reno.
I've voted multiple times. I've participated in poll watching and such. I've been around the machines. I went down and looked at them the other day. I know enough about the machines to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that they are manipulable. And that's why it's time to get rid of them. This is about election integrity. We know the machines are manipulable, and this is our opportunity to do away with them. That I do know.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Electronic poll books would be different from electronic voting machines or the electronic counting machines for paper ballots. One real advantage that I've seen at the polling place in using an electronic poll book is that if a voter comes in and their name is not in your registration list, you can quickly check if they have come to the wrong polling place and get good information to get them to the right place to vote so they will be voting with the right ballot. And I think that's a real service that I've seen as a result of using electronic poll books. I'm pleased that the members of the public in my county are invited to see the tests for the machines and participate in them. These machines are not connected to the internet, so there's not going to be hacking on those machines. I'm not saying they always produce the result, but if you have a paper copy, a paper ballot, then you will have that result. I appreciate the comments from the senator from Finney. Yes, indeed, one person at the polling place is handing out the ballots, and they could easily discern what the serial number is on that ballot. Those are the same people that handle the ballots after they come out of the tabulating machine. So that is a significant concern, and I do not believe could be easily addressed by our Secretary of State. So I think the range of issues that are addressed in this amendment deserve a hearing and certainly comments from our county clerks and our Secretary of State before we adopt such language.
Senator from Reno, do you wish to respond? We have other people seeking recognition. Chair recognizes Senator from Barton, Senator Straub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question, and I'm not sure if, I think all of us can probably answer this, but has the Kansas Secretary of State or any election officer in the state of Kansas been able to have an independent third party inspect the hardware, software, firmware, or source code of any electronic voting equipment in the past?
Senator from Reno.
My understanding is that that has not been done.
Senator from Barton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I believe it's because the three main voting equipment providers do not allow it. They claim that it's proprietary information, and they don't want anyone knowing how they create the electronic voting equipment. But pretty sure every one of us in this room has a smartphone. And if you don't have a smartphone, God bless you. But that's also proprietary information, and it seems to work just fine. I think this amendment is awesome, and it's finally an opportunity for this body to stop fraud and stop hackers before they infiltrate yet another state system. In just the 4 years I've been here in the Senate, we have dealt with extreme fraud of our unemployment insurance system and also of our Kansas court system. Which system is next? Thank you.
Senator from Reno, you wish to respond?
No, thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from Johnson, Senator Holster.
I have a question for the carrier of the amendment, if he would stand for it.
He will.
Yes, my question is this: if this amendment were to pass and the bill were to pass, when would this go into effect?
Senator from Reno.
The enactment date is on Senate Bill 365. The enactment date will be to the bill it's attached to. And then we could look up the enactment date of 365 if you really want to know that. But otherwise, you could see there's like 150, maybe 150,000 times on the bill it talks about on and after January 1st, 2025 is when this all has to be accomplished by.
Senator from Johnson.
Okay. The reason I asked for that clarification is because I was trying to determine how soon we would be looking for election offices as well as Secretary of State to be making potential changes, because these are monumental changes that we would be asking them to make. Additionally, as it's been pointed out, this is not a thorough vetting of monumental changes to the election system. And while there may be parts here that have valid issues, a debate on the Senate floor does not give us ample time to address all of those issues. And I'll give you just a little bit of information to consider. This amendment takes us backwards essentially 5 decades. The tabulation system started in the 1970s, and we went to that tabulation system because we stopped hand counting because it was extremely expensive. It took way too long, it was error prone, and it was way too easy to rig. At this point, our Secretary of State has made it exceptionally clear that Kansas elections are safe and secure. This is a step backwards, so I will not be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Senator from Reno.
Yeah, thank you. I find it divergent at best to say this is a monumental change, yet it's going back in time. I don't quite understand how those two are compatible. Now, technology is always about convenience. It's always about convenience. I don't know of any example it's anything else. Elections are not convenient. Democracy is not convenient. It's our responsibility to get this right. We have a large percentage of our citizenship who does not feel like we're getting it right, who does not feel like we got it right when the chads were hanging or the drop boxes were stuffed. Doesn't matter. Either way, people are losing confidence. This bill isn't complicated, it's simple. It's a serial number and paper ballots. We've been using paper ballots forever. And again, this was not like our state has grown from 1 million to 10 million people. It's the same as it's been since they started using voter counting machines. We know for a fact they can be manipulated. I know in time we'll be able to prove they've been manipulated. That's the only thing standing between us now, and I'll have a lot of my friends who are going to be angry at me for saying that because they know they've been manipulated. It's our responsibility. This is simple legislation to take it back in time, ensure safety above convenience, and get it right for the people of the state of Kansas.
This time, Chair recognizes the Senator from Shawnee, Senator Close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The carried amendment would take a question.
Well,
could you tell me if there's other states that currently implement the contents of this amendment?
Senator from Reno.
Sorry. There are many counties within many states that do exactly this, yes.
Senator from Shawnee.
One follow-up, Madam Chair. And the significance of the serial number, do they also use that?
I don't know. Apologize. I don't know the exact number of places that use the serial number, but it is included as one of the key pieces in ensuring that we're not having manufactured ballots. And it's another simple check on the system because every ballot is unique. Every ballot has a watermark. Every ballot has a number on it. It brings a security to it because if it's replicated, it's a fake ballot. You figure out your problem at that point.
Senator from Shawnee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While I don't question the intent of the carrier of this amendment concerning election integrity, my concern is, even though this may be germane, it seems awful broad to the underlining bill. And as we look back one session, SB 209, we failed an override 25 on that. We just adopted former Senator from Lynn's Dropbox amendment. I'm just concerned, Madam Chair, that we could be losing the simplicity of what we were trying to bring forth and trying to, rather than taking a bite, trying to eat the whole pie at once. So I will be standing against this amendment for numerous reasons today, and I would ask that the body would do so.
Okay, we need clarification who's in line. Chair recognizes the Senator from Butler, Senator Masterson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. These are the hard parts of the debate and the time we have on the floor. And here's the deal. I don't disagree with anything Senator Reno said. I don't disagree with situational facts. Problem is, at this point in time, we're asking the wrong question. The question was asked is, do we need this amendment? Do we want this amendment? It really doesn't matter right now. So the problem right now is this isn't a vote that's going to secure our election. This vote is not going to do what we're debating and what we're talking about. What the bill's what's going to do is it's going to put an anchor around the underlying bill. And we're going to be back to unregulated drop boxes. Election day is not election day. And what does that do for your confidence in the election? Because I agree, 100% agree. We need confidence in our elections and we have issues. That's why we take these steps. So body, a vote against the amendment is not a vote against the issue or a vote to pass on it. It's a vote to save the underlying bill, which I think has enough. It's going to be hard lift for us as it comes, right? But we need to have regulated drop boxes. We need to have election day. We need the counting to stop. And those are two things I think we can do, even over a veto out of this body. Where you put this noose around the neck. It's just one layer. Not that we don't need it. I want to reiterate that. I don't disagree with what's been said. It's just this amendment will put the anchor around this thing, and we need the underlying issues. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Chair recognizes the senator from Wyandotte, Senator Haley.
I think
Thank you,
I'd
Madam
like to
Chair.
respond first. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I do yield.
Senator, would you like to respond?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate those comments. I really do. They're an incredibly, beautifully verbose commitment to mediocrity. Pure and simple. Pure and simple. Mediocrity at its finest. We know what the problems are. We know what the solutions are. We know what people want. Interestingly, a little organization that goes by the acronym RNC last August voted 168-0 for hand-counted paper ballots. That they did. And yet we don't seem to have the stomach, the courage to do what we know is right, what people support. We're timid. That's a struggle for me. That's a major struggle to think in that, at that level. That's a struggle. Thank you.
Senator from Wyandotte, Senator Haley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, it's interesting because when I stood up, I was going to say one thing about the bill and where I stood. I'm struggling now, too, myself, after the rationale and articulation and insight Senator from Butler brought as to what it might do to the bill, the underlying bill. I stood up to just share point of information about what a count would look like. And by the way, full disclosure, I always vote the paper ballot. I always encourage people to vote the paper ballot. I just like to have a receipt. I like that. I'm not really big on the serial numbers. I'm not sure how that would work. But just for the labor of it all, I just wanted to point out, and I just stood up just to share from Secretary of State's website that roughly every presidential year we've had some numbers, Madam Chair, we've had about 1.1 million Kansans in the presidential election in 2016 voted for the two that's just for the two major candidates, 1.1 million. And last time in 2020, according to Secretary of State's website, it was closer to 1.4 million Kansans. 1.4 million pieces of paper, should this be adopted, that this year would have to be counted and recounted for accuracy. And I know it's divided up into 105 different counties to do that, but that's a lot of paper. That's a lot of counting. It's a lot of cross-checking and to make sure that they're accurate. And I don't know if the workforce, they're having trouble already in some counties getting election workers and bringing them in. And I just don't know if 1.4 million from 4 years, if there'll be even more in 2024 in this presidential election. Again, the senator from Johnson asked, when is this going to be implemented? I'll make the assumption that they plan to implement it this year, if that's what the underlying bill says. And if they do, we're going to have over 1.5 million or so Kansans whose paper ballot will have to be then registered and voted on. And I think that that's labor intensive. That having been said, at first I was against it. I do understand the underlying concerns, again, articulated by what the adoption of this might do if it's brought to the bill. And so I'm undecided as well. I'm struggling with it as well because of not just the amendment, but the underlying bill. Thank you.
Senator from Reno.
Thank
you. Wish to respond?
I do not.
Chair recognizes Senator from Shawnee, Senator Clues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one last response. And once again, I do appreciate the intent of the amendment. And I think we're all fighting for election integrity. But I would just say this. having the knowledge and knowing the truth, but lacking the wisdom to get that implemented can still cause you to lose. Thank you.
Senator from Reno.
Thank you. Again, we've discussed this at length. We know the problem. We know the solution. These a serial number, paper ballots. Those are small steps, much like the voting day ending at 7 p.m. on the election night. These are part and parcel. We've built the case to move away from it, but I encourage us to be strong. We know what's right.
Are there any other questions on the amendment? Seeing none, Senator, you may make your motion.
I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate everybody's attention. As I've said multiple times now, these are steps towards securing our elections. Safety, security are foremost. Convenience is last. I admire the underlying bill. It is a very, very small step in a state that's historically took grand steps and had grand dreams and grand courage. I wish that for the people of Kansas because they expect it of us. And I hope when we vote, we can see that this isn't as big as we've made it out to be and that we can pass this forward. And I'd like to do so with a roll call vote. I'd like to move my motion.
Roll call has been requested. Seeing 5 hands, a roll call is in order.
Alley. Baumgardner. Billinger. Blasey. Bowers. Clays. Corson. Dietrich. Dahl. Erickson. Fagg. Faust Goudeau. Francisco. Gossage. Haley. Holland. Holscher. Kirshen. Cluse. Longbine. Masterson. McGinn. Olson. O'Shea. Peck. Peterson. Petty. Pittman. Pyle. Reddy. Reichman. Schallenberger. Steffen. Straub. Sykes. Thompson. Tyson. Ware. Warren. Wilborn.
Has every senator had the opportunity to vote? Does any senator wish to explain their vote? Chair recognizes Senator from Wyandotte, Senator Petty.
I'm going to change my vote from pass to no.
Okay. Any other changes or explanations? Senator from Shawnee, Senator Clues.
Can we get a preliminary count, please?
"17 aye, 15 no, and 7 pass." The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Having voted 17 aye and 15 no, 7 passing, and present, the amendment passes. We're back on the bill. Chair recognizes the senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have another amendment. I have turned it in. It's 3388.
Okay. We'll wait to get that dispersed. Would you like to explain your amendment or have it read?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll explain it really quickly. Coincidentally, a poll worker came up to me Saturday at a legislative coffee and asked, why can people in his county have a New York driver's license and cast a ballot in Kansas? They give an address that doesn't match their voter registration, doesn't match their ID. And so he said, why aren't they casting provisional ballots? So I did some research and homework, and it's up to each county clerk. It's optional. So this would just make it mandatory across the state that those ballots are provisional, and they can be looked at one at a time to see whether they should be counted or not.
Questions on the amendment? Chair recognizes the senator from Sedgwick, Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for the gentlelady from Lynn.
Proceed.
Thank you. So just for clarification, so anyone without proper identification would vote provisional?
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you. It's not so much proper identification, but in the fact that it doesn't match your address registration. If your identification does not match the address that you are registered to vote at, then it would be a provisional ballot. He said that he's got people coming in from out of state that are voting, and those ballots are being counted, and he doesn't know if it's somebody that is legal to vote or not. So he would just like to see those as provisional ballots.
Senator from Sedgwick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For my understanding, that's already being done. So if you show up at the wrong voting location, or as the senator from Lynn has described, you are already directed to vote provisional. So, and I believe there's staff on the site that can verify that, but I'm pretty sure we're already doing that. That's why. Thank you.
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On page 2, it says the vote may vote a provisional ballot. So each county clerk gets to decide. This just says the voter shall vote a provisional ballot. So it's not optional for the clerk to decide. And it would make the same across the state.
Senator from Sedgwick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that verification and clarification. So the senators requiring that all throughout the state be mandated to follow that same procedure. Thank you. Thank you.
Senator Lynn, do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, the idea is that you are voting the same in each county so that you won't be treated differently in Sedgwick County versus Ottawa County.
It's time. Chair recognizes the senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do understand the concern. I work in a polling place in a county where we have lots of residents who actually have driver's licenses that may be from a different state because they're a resident of Douglas County when they're going to school there, if that's the address that they choose for the registration book. My reading of this has always been that the voter may vote a provisional ballot. We have some voters that, if they're contested, they may choose to walk out of the polling place. Would this require such a voter to vote, even if they wanted to leave the polling place, if you said the word shall?
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, they could still walk out of the, it's just this would ensure that it is a provisional ballot, not a ballot that goes in with the rest of them.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding again was if a voter is unable or refuses to provide current and valid identification, they may vote a provisional ballot. I don't understand how they would be granted the opportunity to be given a regular ballot if their identification, and it's just photo identification, we don't really require that your address be the same on your identification. It just has to be the address where you say you live.
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I understand that you would interpret it that way, but I do know that a county clerk is not interpreting it that way. When the poll worker asked me this weekend, why can somebody with a New York license vote in Kansas and it not be provisional? And so that's when I started investigating it and found out that some counties are treating it as provisional and others are not.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I believe that you have a certain number of days to change your driver's license. We have elections in August. That's often the time that students move, and so they may have a photo ID with a different license. But if this indeed is what's happening, I would believe that this should be changed. If someone's, if a voter is unable to provide current and valid identification, they should not ever be given a regular ballot. And if this gets on, I would certainly work with members of the House to make sure that the wording is as appropriate and as tight as we can make it. So I thank the good senator from Lynn for bringing forward this concern.
Senator from Lynn, do you wish to respond? Chair recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. So I know a lot of people, they may change their address because they have bought a new house. They don't always update that driver's license. They may go online and update their address. So can you share what this amendment would do for those individuals?
Senator from Lynn.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Please repeat the question.
So I know a lot of times people will buy a new house and they will relocate, but they may or may not update their driver's license. And they will update their address with the driver's license and update their registration with their election office. but that driver's license, because of the cost, they don't have to necessarily update that driver's license. So they are a registered voter and they are a legal voter, but what would you do if the address, because it's my understanding that any government ID is valid and those poll workers are checking the name and the picture to make sure that they are a registered voter.
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I thought there was a restriction on your driver's license changing the date, but I'm not sure on that. But yes, they would be provisional also under this. It's just to make sure that that the address matches with the voter registration.
Senator from Johnson.
Yeah, I just think this may put more provisional ballots out there. And again, I think this underlying bill, it was trying to make election day. And again, I think that is a false statement because we do know that we have to go through the canvass, and at least in Johnson County, some of our elections are very close. So I believe this is going to add more provisional ballots and more concern, and so I will not be supporting it, but appreciate the discussion. Thank you.
Senator from Lynn, do you wish to respond? Okay. Chair now recognizes the senator from Shawnee, Senator O'Shea.
Thank you. My question was very similar, and I know I've had that experience multiple times, so I probably need to update my driver's license, but I just moved essentially neighborhoods, same area. Driver's license isn't updated. A, cost. B, the biggest thing was time. I don't want to have to go to the DMV before my driver's license expires. So I can just see that as another hurdle. Thank you.
Are there other questions on the amendment? Seeing none, Senator.
No, I can close. Thank you,
close?
Madam Chairman. I was just thinking out loud and counting. When I moved, I thought I had a 3-month limit that I had to update my driver's license and residency, but that may be wrong. So, but I do know you are supposed to update your driver's license with your current residency. So that's an issue in itself that you're not doing that. Hopefully, even if this does create more provisional ballots, we're looking for accuracy and the protection of the integrity of our ballots. So with that, I move my amendment. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Chair is in doubt. Division. I only see 4 hands. I see 5 hands. Roll call is in order.
Alley. Baumgardner. Billinger. Lazy. Bowers. Clays. Corson. Dietrich. Dahl. Erickson. Fag. Fascudo.
I'm gonna go with
Francisco. Gossage. Haley. Holland. Holscher. Kirshen. Cluse. Longbine. Masterson. McGinn. Olson. O'Shea. Peck. Peterson. Petty. Pittman. Pyle. Ready. Reichman. Schallenberger. Steffen. Straub. Sykes. Thompson. Tyson? Ware? Warren? Wilborn?
Has every senator had the opportunity to vote? Does any senator wish to explain their vote? Does any senator wish to change their vote? Seeing no one, clerk will close the roll and tally the vote.
I wish I had some juicy fruit gum. You have any?
27 votes voting in favor of the bill, 6 against, and 3 passing and present. The amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill. Senator from Lynn.
I have another amendment.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You're doing such a good job. We can't let you out of there too quick. So it's 3390.
Okay. Let's get it handed out. Okay. Senator, would you like to have your amendment read, or would you like to explain it?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll explain it. It's, all of us would like to clean up the voter rolls. And I found out that if you have a duplicate registration in another county, there's nothing that requires you to be removed from the roll in your previous county. So this would just make that requirement so that you can't be registered in 2 counties at the same time in the state of Kansas.
Are there questions on the amendment? Senator recognizes the senator from Lyons, Senator Longbine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could the carrier of the amendment explain whose responsibility it is to remove them from the roll? If I move from one county to another, am I now required to notify my previous county that I no longer live in that county, or is that county just supposed to know I moved, or how exactly would this work?
Senator from Lynn.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'm glad you asked. It was actually a couple of county clerks that I talked to about this, and there's a system that they run and some checks, and so they would communicate back and attempt to contact the voter to remove them.
Senator from Lyon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure that answers my question. I mean, they can certainly see the duplicate, but I don't know that the county clerk knows everyone in their county, and I'm not sure. So how would they know? So we're going to require county clerks to call everybody to verify which county they live in, or are you required to notify the county? Are you supposed to notify the county that you move into, that you're moved from the other county? I'd just like to know more about the logistics rather than running a report and the 2 county clerks decide where you live.
Senator from Lynn.
That's a great question, Madam Chairman, and it goes along with the same procedure and process that we have for deaths and other items that clerks discover. So it goes under the same process. I cannot speak to the details of it, but I do know that it is an issue and that I talked to clerks about this. I didn't just make it up out of the air.
Chair recognizes the senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand how this can be a problem. Again, living in a county where we have a number of students who may choose to register to vote in Douglas County, and then upon graduation may go to another county in Kansas or out of state. In the case where there's a duplicate registration and it may have been a presidential year election and they decided that they wanted to be registered in Douglas County so that they could be sure to get that opportunity to vote, and yet come May, they return to their county. How would the county clerks decide which registration should be removed from the books?
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The county clerk doesn't decide that. This is much like a death, and just because they find the duplication doesn't mean they automatically come off the rolls. There's so many processes and procedures, and I would need a clerk to speak to it, to be an expert on it. But I do know that they have come across duplicates, and they had asked if we could put this in the process, in the procedures, so that they can begin it to remove them from the rolls. I don't know the details of how they remove them or how they decide, but they did ask for this language, and I support it wholeheartedly.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm reading on page 3, section F, and it says, except as otherwise provided by law, when a voter dies or is disqualified for voting, the registration of the voter shall be void, and the county election officer shall remove such voter's name from the registration books and the party affiliation lists whenever, and then one is an obituary. If someone has died, then they're probably not going to be voting again this county or any other county in Kansas. And indeed, their name should be taken off the list. But if we add in that same section, a duplicate registration is reported pursuant to this and amendments, who's doing the reporting? Is that limited? Again, are we taking both registrations off? If it's a duplicate registration, it would be a duplicate registration in both counties. Does their name come off in both counties?
Senator from Lynn.
So I have just been told that this is in rules and regulations, and we're just codifying it in statute.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If it's in rules and regulations, why do we need it in statute?
Senator from Lynn.
Because rules and regulations are not statute. This is putting it into law, so it does not get changed other than by a legislative body.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't know that there was interest in changing it. If we have a way to deal with duplicate registrations, and I will look at our rules and regs and see how this is handled, unless the senator from Lynn can explain what that process is. And again, which county does the taking off? How is that decision made?
Senator from Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't have the details on that.
Senator from Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Then again, I would like this to be tied. I guess it's pursuant to a particular statute, but if a duplicate registration is reported, it says the county election officer shall remove such voter's name. And I think we need to make sure that we're not taking that name off in more than one county or the county where a voter intends to return. Thank you.
Senator from Lynn, do you wish to respond? Are there other questions for the senator from Lynn on the amendment? Seeing none, Senator, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think we need to do what we can to clean up the voter rolls. I was requested by a county clerk to bring this amendment. I support it, and I hope you will too. I move my amendment.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Chair is in doubt. Division has been requested. All those in favor, please stand. All those opposed, please stand. On a count of 27 in favor and 9 against, the amendment passes. We're back on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do not have another amendment. I just wanted to let the body know that I found out that it's the last record of inactivity that is removed. So the record with the newest activity would not be, the registration would not be removed, if that gives anybody peace of mind. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. We are back on the bill. Would the carrier please stand? Thank you. Makes me nervous.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions on the bill? Chair recognizes Senator from Johnson, Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions, just some comments. It seems like it was a long time ago when we first started talking about this bill, and the carrier was talking about the history of the legislation in 2017. He said that this was only because of military, and I served on that committee, and I was in this, I actually carried the bill on the floor, and that was not an accurate depiction of what actually happened. We were talking about how it was getting harder and harder for our postal service to be able to deliver those ballots, and unfortunately that's not gotten any better. It's actually gotten worse over the last 8 years. And just an example of this, both of my children go to school out of state, and they apply for their mail ballot well in advance because their mother is kind of dictatorial on that they need to vote. But so they always register early and for that mail ballot, and I watched, because I am also a pretty type A personality, to see when it was mailed by the election office, and then asking my kids when they received their ballot. It took over 2 weeks for them to actually get their ballots, even though it was mailed the first day after that it was eligible to be sent. And one of my children, who's also a very rule follower, got his email from the campus that he had mail. He went, picked up his ballot, filled it out, and he didn't have a stamp, but he went and they couldn't use his Apple Pay, so he ran to his dorm and got us money to buy the stamp, went back, mailed it the exact day he got it in the mail. And that ballot, then we were watching, looking and see what the process, the chain of command was in that. It was not delivered and accounted until the day after the election. This is someone who is a legal voter, a good voter, who has, trying to check all the marks, and no fault to his own, we are saying that his vote should not be counted. And I think we should be making sure that all legal voters should be voting and making things easier for him or for them. And disenfranchising our youth especially, I think is going to be detrimental to democracy and to our future as not only a state but a country. So I was against this bill before, and I shouldn't be surprised, but amazingly enough, I think this body has made it even worse and less tolerable than it started. And this body, we think it's safe to put babies in boxes, but not our ballots. So I think we should vote against this. We're disenfranchising people from voting, making it harder for our youth who are out of state, for our disabled, for our elderly. And I will be opposing this, and I hope you do too.
Senators, I believe it was the senator from Johnson that was up first. Senator from Johnson, Senator Holster.
I do have a question for the carrier of the bill.
Please continue.
Yes, can you please tell me how many valid ballots would be thrown out with the underlying bill?
Senator from Johnson.
That's a point of speculation. I have no idea. If we're talking about the original bill in its original form, Each election is probably going to be, well, to be honest, if all the ballots are supposed to arrive by 7 p.m., none would be thrown out. It's just, they have to get there in time and to be counted. If people are late, if somebody shows up to vote in person at 8 p.m., they're not going to be able to vote. You have to follow the rules. We're setting a uniform set of rules, and the same should follow for the mail-in voting.
Senator from Johnson.
Thank you. I believe it was reported that with the 2020 elections, this would amount to, with this bill, over 32,000 valid ballots being thrown out and not counted. So again, we are talking about valid ballots not being counted in the election. So additionally, another problem with this bill is there are no provisions included to educate voters about these potential changes that would be put in place. So the underlying bill is problematic in itself, and then we've added an amendment that goes against the Secretary of State's wishes by eliminating the remote ballot boxes, which is a bigger problem, and then another amendment which makes monumental changes to the tabulation system. So all in all, we have a bill that is extremely problematic, that in its totality is a major voter disenfranchisement bill. So I will not be supporting it, and I urge the body to reject it. Thank you.
Senator from Johnson, do you wish to respond?
Just very briefly, a voter's only disenfranchising themselves by not following the rules. If you want to vote, if you want to have your vote count, show up at the polls. You have multiple ways to vote. You have days to vote. For some reason, we're so myopic, we're focusing on that if you can't vote for mail, you can't, by mail, you can't vote at all. That's not the way. Even back in the Civil War, when I was voting, you show up to vote. And this argument about the post office getting worse, yes, it is getting worse. If you think that the mail-in voting is the proper way to go that ensures your ballot arrives on time, talk to some of my constituents who only get mail every 5 days. So you're disenfranchising yourself by not doing it the right way, by not showing up at the polls. If you've got somebody in a remote state, attending college or something like that, get the ballot to them, send it to them FedEx, let them fill it out, let them send it back FedEx, gets there at 10 o'clock the next morning. You can get it done. It depends on how much you want to vote.
No.
That's all it is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I recognize the senator from Sedgwick, Senator Ware.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, we all have difficulties in life, but some of us, the disabled in particular, have even greater difficulties. And when it comes to voting, 1 in 5 of the disabled in the 2022 elections said that they had difficulty voting. That's 3 times more than those who don't have a disability. They have trouble getting to the polling place. They have trouble getting inside the building. They have trouble with the steps. If 1 step is all it takes. It doesn't have to be a big staircase. If the doorway is too narrow for a chair, they can't get inside. They can't vote. If the doors are too hard to open, they can't vote. If they happen to not be in a chair, but waiting in line and standing becomes extremely painful, they may not be able to vote. For many of these people, mailing in a ballot is the only way they can vote. A disabled person is anyone who any condition of body or mind that makes it difficult to do certain activities or interact with the world around them. Disabled voters face physical or logistical barriers that when trying to vote in person. So, the option to vote by mail is a critical means of accessibility for them. Removing the 3-day grace period would create an unnecessary barrier for disabled voters who require more time to complete and submit their ballots. Furthermore, many disabled voters require assistance and other accommodations to exercise their right to vote. The 3-day grace period, 3 days, I mean, my goodness, it certainly is going to break the world if we don't have, those, can't allow 3 days. The 3-day grace period allows them the necessary time to coordinate those resources that they might need to ensure that they have the equal opportunity to participate in our democracy. And to say that, oh, just send it by means beyond the postal system by FedEx, that's beyond the means of many, many people, especially the disabled, tend to be very, very low income. This is, I know that no one intended to make life more difficult for the disabled, but this bill does.
Senator, you wish to respond?
Just very briefly, my mom's in a skilled nursing facility right now. She's laid up in bed. She has to have a couple CNAs help her get in and out. All I would do is simply get her ballot and I would take it for her to the polling place and drop it off, or wherever, which is allowed right now. There are all sorts of opportunities for disabled people to get help. We still allow for up to 10 ballots to be delivered by an individual, which is part of the reason we have that still in law, so that we can accommodate those who are unable or have a very difficult time getting to the polls. We're not insensitive to that at all. We're just trying to make it a level playing field, a uniform ending point to the election. It's pretty simple. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there other questions for the senator from Johnston? Chair recognizes Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Falscado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in opposition of the legislation of Senate Bill 365, but to perhaps make the legislation better, I have an amendment.
Have you turned it in?
I have.
Like to give us the number, please?
The number is 3391.
Okay, we'll wait until we get it dispersed. Senator, would you like to have it read or would you like to explain it?
Madam Chair, I'd like to have it read.
Will the reader please read?
I move to amend Senate Bill 365 on page 1 in line 24 before the by inserting subject to the deadline for receipt by the office of the county election officer as set forth in this subsection. All advanced voting ballots received by mail by the office of the county election officer after the closing of the polls on the date of any election specified in KSA 25-1122F and amendments thereto, and which are postmarked or are otherwise indicated by the United States Postal Service to have been mailed on or before the close of the polls on the date of the election, shall be delivered by the county election officer to a special election board or the county board of canvassers as determined by the Secretary of State for canvassing in a manner consistent as nearly as may be with other advanced voting ballots in line 26 by striking 7 p.m. and inserting the last delivery of mail by the United States Postal Service in line 27 before date by inserting second day following the, also on page 1 in the title in line 2 by striking 7 p.m. on and inserting the last delivery of mail on the second day following.
Senator from Sedgwick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just 6 years ago, the Kansas legislature added the 3-day grace period in response to longer turnaround times for the United States Postal Service for their first-class mail. That policy passed out of this chamber unanimously. And now the legislative intent was clear then. I'm just curious of why we want to change that grace period, even for our credit card bills that we mail in, even for the taxes that we will soon file. We are allowed a grace period time, Madam Chair. And so, with all the debate that we've heard today, to have some grace and mercy on some of those Kansans that Senator Ware from Cedric made, I experienced those same situations, Madam Chair. I'm concerned about that mailing process. I have mailed newsletters from this building, and it's taken almost a month to get from Topeka, then it goes to Kansas City, and then to Wichita, Cedric County. And so, for that reason, Madam Chair, I am just offering a compromise of the 2 days. If we want to eliminate the 3 days, how about 3 days? And I'll stand for questions. Or 2 days, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Any questions, Senator from Johnson?
Not a question, just a remark. When we were first part of the debate in this bill, I made mention that things have changed at the post office, and mail is not routinely postmarked anymore, and a barcode that can't be deciphered is used in many cases. So any attempt to use a postmark is going to be difficult, if not impossible, and you're going to have to adjudicate. I don't know how you would adjudicate. If there's no postmark, you can't tell and utilize this amendment. So unfortunately, I'll have to stand against this amendment as an unfriendly amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator from Sedgwick.
Madam Chair, we would use it the exact same way we were doing 6 years ago with the amendment allowing the 3-day grace period.
Senator from Johnson, do you have anything else to add?
Well, the things that the post office have changed. We're consolidating post offices. They're using these routing centers now, and that's why you get barcodes instead of postmarks in a lot of cases. And it just, the post office is in a disintegration mode. So any attempt to utilize a postmark, I think, is going to be futile. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator from Sedgwick.
Madam Chair, that's exactly why we need this amendment. If of what the senator from Johnson just described, of all the changes that are going on within the post office, we need to allow that grace period time of one's ballot, one's vote to be counted. And for his reason, we need this amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there other questions on the amendment? Chair recognizes Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As someone whose son works for the post office, I'm not sure how I feel about this conversation, but that aside, I do have a question. Do we have any data around whether 2 days or 3 days grace period, the percentage of mail that's late comes in during that period of time? Where does the 2 or 3 day grace period come from?
Senator from Sedgwick.
Again, Madam Chair, this amendment is a compromise, and the gentlelady from Cedric, as a matter of fact, my daughter is employed by the United States Postal Service. She worked in the downtown office she graduated from college, and she's been with the United States Postal Service for the last 8 years. So just for the record, and Madam Chair, I do know this, that individuals as simple as trying to find a stamp to mail that advance ballot back inner city individuals. They have to walk sometimes. They can't just jump in their vehicle and, you know, just go and vote. And Madam Chair, one day, tomatoes, tomatoes. Again, I think that it's a compromise.
Chair recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Olson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My comments today are really about the post office. I'm not going to sit here and let people beat up the post office. You know, it all starts with when you put it in the mail. That's how quick it normally starts to get there. I've tested this. There was the same argument 3 or 4 years ago when I was chair of Fed and State about the post office. And so we tested it all across the state. Mail moves very quickly. Yes, they did change the process. We used to have sort facilities in Topeka, Fort Scott, Dodge, or all across the state. We had about 6 or 8 of them. Now they've changed it to these major hubs like Kansas City. They bought modern equipment. Things actually move quicker, is what I'm finding out. So I think a lot of it, we can talk about beating up the postal workers that work hard to make sure we get our mail on a daily basis. But in my mind, over the last 10 years, the mail has gotten better, not worse. And another thing, I know I'm a little off subject, but when I was chair of this committee and we had similar bills, we had a local school bond up, and it was a mail-in ballot. And it doesn't go past the day. It doesn't give it 3-day grace period. They put actual time on there. It's like 2:30 in the day of that election. And that's when it had to be in. And you know what? Your vote wasn't counted after. And there was a lot of other comments made here today, and I agree. I think we've lost a lot of confidence in our election process. On both sides of the aisle, I think people are struggling to, do we believe this? Is this right? I think transparency, more openness, I think we've got a lot of work on this issue on both sides of the aisle to improve. I think one bill's not enough to debate this year. We need to be kicking more stuff out and working it on this floor and debating it. We're not doing that. That's something we probably ought to do in the future. You know, sometimes it's hard to have trust in this body. You know, we just seen the pay situation, and it really didn't get a vote on the floor. So what are the people going to think? We're trying to pass an election bill. And, you know, I mean, how can you have confidence in your leaders when you don't even take responsibility for your own pay raise to put it on the floor and have an actual vote? You know, in my mind, it's hard to have credibility. So I think I don't have a problem with her amendment. I'm probably not going to support it. I'm going to support the underlining bill, but we've got a lot of work to get that credibility back with our voters here in Kansas, and the transparency is what's going to do it. Us working across the aisle. This bill's a long ways from done, and to get it done, I don't think a lot of these pieces got amended in will be there in the end, but I think it all starts here debating the issues, and I wish people would stop beating up on the post office, because I know come election time, all the mailer people say the quickest way across the country to get a piece of mail out is to go through the Wichita post office. So I don't know what more of an endorsement that is when you hear all these mail vendors on the East Coast say, we can get a piece of mail to Florida or New York or California quicker when it leaves the Wichita post office. So
it's because we're in the middle.
Thank you.
Back to the senator from Sedgwick.
Madam Chair, thank you. And I am truly offended by the former chairman of the Senate Federal and State Affairs Committee. During that time when he served on that committee, that Senate Federal and State Committee did not debate election bills. We debated guns, abortion. It was called the Sin Bill. There was really an elections committee that some of us in here have served on. And so when I sit on that committee now, some of the things we're discussing is like, we already discussed that. And so if we are concerned, because I am not beating up on the post office. I know for a matter of fact, and our Secretary of the Senate can confirm, that when my newsletters are mailed from Topeka, they go to Kansas City, and then they are mailed to Wichita. And it took about a month to do so. Senator from Johnson, Madam Chair, I stood and had my amendment read to be respectful of the body and for a compromise. And again, I am just beating up on the post office, ridiculous. But I do know those 250 people that were here in the building on February 19th for Black Legislative Day. I do know I met with them over the break, over the weekend. And they are concerned about this piece of legislation, Senate Bill 365. It makes it harder for people to vote, period. And a simple compromise going from 3 days to 2. But Madam Chair, that's it and that's all. I'm offended to try to talk about the Postal Service, and we're talking about voting.
Are there any other questions for the Senator from Sedgwick? Senator from Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick clarification on the post office. I'm not, I hope anybody working for the post office doesn't believe that I'm trying to disparage them individually. The structure has changed. That's created a lot of problems. They have a lot of difficulty finding people to work. I know particularly some of my mail carriers have to work double shifts and work on Saturday and Sunday. They are hardworking people. There's no doubt about that. They are stuck in a structure that is changing rather dramatically. And of course, our senator in Washington has asked the Postmaster General what's going to be the end result. And so my point has tried to be the fact that we're changing the structure of the mail. It is becoming much more difficult to rely on a delivery time than it used to be. And that's the only point that I'm trying to make with regard to the post office. And I hope any Postal Service employee or anybody else who has connections to the post office understands that I'm not disparaging their hard work. Thank you, Madam.
Are there any other questions for the Senator from Sedgwick? Seeing none, Senator, you may make your close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of the amendments that have passed for Senate Bill 365, counting hand ballots, they're going to need more bodies to do that. I know there's a shortage of volunteers as well who work on Election Day. Madam Chair, again, has nothing to do with the post office. It's about voting. It's about this bill wants to eliminate the 3-day grace period to have your ballot counted. So even if it's mailed on time, there might be a delay somewhere there. Who knows? The truck may break down. The boxes are still in the back. We have COVID and we're at home again. I don't know, Madam Chair. I was just offering a compromise solution. We want to eliminate 3 days, and I'm just saying, hey, let's do 2 days. Restore 2 of those days that we are trying to eliminate to help people exercise their right to vote. And I'm offended again when we say, oh, well, they could just go to the polls. There are people that can't just go to the polls. Here in Sedgwick County, let's do what they do, Madam Chair. When our insurance commissioner, Vicki Smith, was the chair of the Real Elections Committee, here in Shawnee County, when they mail out advance ballots, they mail a stamped envelope. I've been offering that legislation for years, that we mandate all county elections to mail a stamped envelope to return it. Let's help our constituents. And again, I just wanted to help make voting easier for some of those who don't have all of the capabilities and abilities and financial situations to just go in the garage, get in the car, and drive and vote. It's not that simple, Madam Chair. And I believe this amendment helps equalize those options that some have and others don't. Again, Madam Chair, it was a compromise to this amendment was. And not about the post office, it was about your right to vote. Madam Chair, I move my amendment.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. I believe the ayes have it. Are there any other division? Okay. Division is requested. Division is requested. All those in favor, please stand. Those opposed? Nine in voting in favor and 22 against. The motion fails. We're now back on the bill. Seeing no further questions, Senator from Johnson, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that when the committee rises and reports Senate Bill 365 as amended favorably for passage.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. This time, the chair recognizes the majority leader from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried.
The clerk will read the committee report.
On motion of Senator Alley, the Senate resolved itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of bills on the calendar under the heading of General Orders with Senator McGinn in the chair. Recommended, Senate Bill 365 be amended on motion of Senator Tyson and Senator Steffen, and the bill be passed as amended.
The chair recognizes Senator from Sedgwick, Senator McGinn, to adopt the committee report.
I move adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries. Introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 534 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning criminal procedure.
This constitutes introduction of Senate Bill 534. Reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
Mr. President, the Committee on Utilities recommends Senate Bill 487 be amended and the bill be passed as amended. Mr. President, the Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends Senate Bill 254 be amended by substituting with a new bill to be designated as substitute for Senate Bill number 254, and the substitute bill be passed.
Are there announcements? Seeing none, the chair recognizes the senator from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move the Senate adjourn until 2:30 p.m. on Tuesday, March 5th, 2024.
You have heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries. The Senate is adjourned.